Good afternoon and welcome to today's installment of the PENC webinar series. My name is Katie Cox. I'm the PENC Membership Director. Today we have Dealing with Difficult People, Part 1 with Rich St. Dennis. Rich is a trainer in Atlanta with many clients. He has done programs for PENC for 10 years, to include the PENC Leadership Institute 8 times. He has taught this topic in many organizations for over 20 years, and he did a webinar on this topic just 2 weeks ago. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them in the question box. And if you have any technical difficulties, go ahead and write that in the chat box and I will assist you as best I can. All right, Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And can you hear me okay?
Sound great.
Excellent, excellent. Welcome, everyone. Today, first of 2 sessions, we're going to talk about basics for understanding and dealing with difficult people. And then a week from now, we'll talk about special techniques to handle specific types of difficult people. Our agenda today covers the basics, understanding difficult people, the many types, and also what are the triggers and drivers, and also what do we do to deal with them? How do we keep ourselves calm? Also, how do we calm them? And also, how do we redirect and influence their behavior? So that's our agenda. I see that we have 56 people online. Welcome, thanks for joining us. We expect probably a few more as we go along. As I saw the roster that Katie sent to me, and Katie, thank you so much for setting this up, sending me these materials. I see some familiar faces, or names rather. There's a Susan out there, a Sean, a John, a Caroline, a Monica, and another John that I know pretty well. I see people from companies like McAdams, McKim & Creed, Kimley Horn, Terracon, WSP, Duke Energy, and a bunch of others. I've done work with folks from those organizations. So welcome to all of you. 58 people online right now. Thanks for joining us. On a very serious note, this is a time of tremendous stress. Things happening in our country, in our communities around the world. And quite frankly, many people are not at their best when things are very tense. And it's at this time, dealing with them can be difficult. Some of them you can certainly avoid. Just pass them by, move on. But if you have to deal with these folks, may want to pick up a few tips, techniques, tools to deal with people that you cannot avoid, people that you have to interact with as part of your day-to-day work. And all of this applies equally to those in your personal life and at home. Now, the first thing I want to say, first and foremost, is that dealing with difficult people is about developing our emotional resilience. Resilience, our ability to bounce back from a setback, our ability to withstand emotional pressure, distress. And there are several factors that contribute to resilience. Let me review these, and then we'll get into our handout and also the materials in this course. So this is kind of the big picture. In dealing with difficult people, first of all, you have to be willing to face the tough realities squarely and see them for what they are and see the behavior for what it is. Some of us find it convenient, and sometimes it's actually very healthy to just kind of let our mind drift away and float away and not even think about it. That's a coping strategy. But to have true resilience is to be able to face the tough realities squarely. Secondly, in the face of all these difficulties, somehow remaining positive, optimistic, hopeful, having a positive view of the future, for example. This too shall pass. We can get beyond this. Another key trait is the ability to forge strong, emotionally mature relationships. Not just get along, go along to get along relationships, but mature relationships when you can talk about the difficult things. Part of dealing with difficult situations, difficult people, unexpected change, unexpected crises is the ability to improvise, to be adaptable, to be flexible. The Marines have a terrific motto. Besides Semper Fi, always faithful, they believe in improvising, adapting, and overcoming. And that's one of the things we often have to do, because sometimes the behaviors we see from people catch us completely by surprise. They're out of the blue. So we have to be flexible in handling it. And always, always, always show you care. Show you care about other people. And also show that you care about yourself. Sometimes you have to be willing to stand up for yourself and set boundaries. And sometimes that's exactly what that other person needs. That person whose behavior is difficult. Now, as we go through the rest of the program today, I invite you to open up, look at, follow along with the handout that Katie sent to you. This is a 2-page handout with the key points that I'd like to cover with you today. So lesson number 1, and we now have 66 of you online, and we invite all of you to send in your questions, also to send in your comments, observations, experiences. Always happy to hear from you. There are no difficult people. There are no difficult people, but there are people who have forms of behavior that may be difficult for us to handle. So this is going to be a key point throughout the day. Separate the person from their behavior. What you're seeing probably is difficult behavior that occupies a certain portion of their life. That portion of their life may be with you and may be very intense. But beyond that behavior is a person. Once was a innocent child. Somewhere along the way, something has happened. And right now in this moment with you, they're exhibiting some form of behavior that's difficult. Now, behavior involves the words that they choose to use. It could be rather harsh, abusive words, yelling at you, complaining, criticizing, sarcasm. Behavior also involves gestures, body language, finger pointing. Imagine someone wagging a finger in your face, folding up their arms, closing up to you, turning away. Those behaviors can be difficult to handle sometimes. Of course, facial expressions. Have you ever had somebody grimacing at you, staring you down, sulking? Or maybe somebody who gives you a blank stare, they freeze up, you're getting nothing while looking at them. And of course, their actual actions. That's the most potent form of behavior, acts of aggression. At the other end, inaction, passivity, not doing anything. Sometimes that can be difficult as well. And then there's something called passive aggression. This is an interesting term. The person is being very maybe nice, serene, calm, but what they're doing are things that are annoying. For example, you've asked somebody to complete something for you, and then they take their sweet time. They know you need it now, and they wait till exact last moment. In fact, they might be late. These are forms of passive aggression. Or they say things about you in a ambiguous way. You're certainly the most interesting person I've ever met, and that inflection in their voice may hint at some sarcasm. So today we're going to be focusing not on the people, but on their behavior. So we need to retitle this course, because there are no difficult people. This is a course on dealing with difficult behavior. The behavior that we have not yet learned to handle. The behavior that's rather awkward, intimidating, difficult for us to deal with. Now, in the handout, there's the heading, Ask Yourself. There are certain questions when you encounter difficult behavior, you probably need to ask yourself. And the first one is it me? Is my behavior the problem? Now, one indicator that your behavior might be the problem is that there are many, many, many difficult people, difficult forms of behavior that you encounter in your life, at work or at home. We have to look inward. Is it me? We have to acknowledge that we might be, in our niceness, actually annoying the other person, or in trying to deal with them in a constructive way, that could be annoying based on the circumstances. Then, of course, we have to look at their behavior. Is their behavior just different from what we like? Maybe you're someone who likes to take your time to get something done. Maybe you're someone who likes things to be just right. Well, if you're dealing with a speed demon, an adrenaline junkie, he just wants to get stuff done and close enough is good enough, that difference between you and them, that value difference can be a source of annoyance. And then we start labeling them as difficult. But avoid labeling people, just say that behavior is uncomfortable to me. Maybe their behavior is incompetent. They don't know how to do things, and that becomes annoying. You've taught them something, you've explained something several times, and they keep getting it wrong. Maybe there's a learning disability on their part. I had somebody in a workshop not too long ago say to me, you know, Rich, when I'm leading my team and I explain things to people, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. And I could see that this person was powerfully annoyed by that. After listening to him, I asked him a question. Is it that they just don't get it, or is there the possibility that maybe you're not presenting it in ways to help them get it? And there are people out there who are incompetent. They may be a disorganized mess. They are not someone who manages their time well. So that can be a source of annoyance. Or maybe their behavior is just truly toxic. They are truly destructive in the things they do. So we have to ask ourselves a question. Is it me? What is it about them? And then finally, is it that I lack the resilience? Is it that I lack the tools to deal with it? Well, today, you have to believe that you can develop this resilience. You can learn the tools. Other people have done that. And so can you. So can you. At this point, I see we have 70 people online. Katie, do we have anybody who has a question or comment yet?
I don't see any questions yet, but again, participants feel free to ask your questions in the question box if you have any.
What will happen is if you send them in, Katie will read them out to me, and I love to entertain questions real time. So please feel free to comment, but also to ask questions. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. Now, when I do a workshop face-to-face, I often engage the class to tell me what they know for sure about how to deal with, let's call it, difficult behavior. What did your mama teach you? What did your daddy teach you? What have you learned from experience? And then I'll take 10 minutes to gather one or two ideas from each person. And I will tell you, by the end of that 10 minutes, we have gathered as a group collectively a lot of the teaching points that I'm going to make during the day. So I'm able to reinforce it and play it back to them. So I know for sure, my experience tells me that out of us 70 right now online in this webinar, collectively, we have incredible wisdom. And if we could all do a Vulcan mind meld, we'd be able to handle this stuff no problem. But that's the problem. We all don't know everything that everyone else knows. And sometimes, even if we know it, we don't follow through on it. So part of it is learning it, but the other part is following through. Now, right now, down in Boca Raton, Florida, there's a fellow by the name of Jim. He's my son-in-law. He's a firefighter with the county fire department. I talked to Jim quite a few times, had a chat with him just the other day. And I'm convinced that dealing with difficult people is being like a firefighter. I want you to think about this. What are 3 ways in which dealing with difficult behavior is like being a firefighter? Well, here's some thoughts. Jim will tell me every time we talk, there are different types of fires, and you have to understand the type of fire you are dealing with. He sent me a picture the other day of a terrible, terrible fire in an apartment building. And he was talking about the peculiarities of that fire compared to some other ones. So number 1 is to understand the fires, the behaviors that we face. There are many types of difficult behavior. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. Secondly, like a firefighter, we have to lean into that discomfort. We have to deal with our fears. It's scary to deal with the uncertain, the unknown. Firefighters have to do this all the time. But with training, with the right tools, the right techniques, and with practice, they can get pretty proficient at it. I asked him what caused you to go into firefighting. He says, I just like the idea of it, the idea of making a difference. How much did you know about it? Well, not much, but I went to the fire academy. They taught me a lot, and we had to practice, and we still practice all the time. How much like a firefighter are you right now? Here's another metaphor. To be like a doctor, an emergency room doctor. Diagnose the illness, diagnose the injuries, act calmly to deal with them, apply the right techniques, the right medicine. So let's talk about diagnosing the different types of behavior. There are 4 major behavioral patterns that we'll talk about. And within those, there are several discrete types of difficult behavior. And we have to acknowledge extreme behavior, too much of this, too much of that, can be difficult to handle, but they are predictable. It's just like fighting a fire. If you understand the types of fire you may have to fight, you're going to have more calm and courage and skill in dealing with it. Now, on the handout, there's a chart. We'll fill it in. We'll spend a bit of time here filling in the blanks. Now, behavior can be diagnosed on the up and down axis in terms of how assertive or unassertive the person is. When you go beyond assertiveness, now you get up to the very top, you get very strong, loud, aggressive behavior. That's behavior that is super assertive. Down towards the bottom, if somebody is unassertive, they now start to become passive, cautious, maybe too agreeable. So that's the first dimension. At work, with the people you deal with, most of the time, where are you on that up and down axis? You might put a little X. You might be different at home. Circumstances are different, but know where you are in terms of assertiveness. The other dimension, left to right, is what is your degree of emotional expression? Those of us way over to the left, we tend to be reserved, unemotional. Some of us are way over to the right, highly emotional, very dramatic, extremely expressive. Some of us are over to the left, very reserved, poker face. Where are you on that line? Left to right. Where are you at home? Might be different, altogether possible. In fact, rather normal. Circumstances or roles are different. So know where you are, and then use this to chart the people you're dealing with. Here are some terms we use to describe these patterns of behavior. If someone is strong, comes across as very assertive and unemotional, that's the direct style. The opposite, very emotional, but on the quiet side, more cautious, more passive. We call those the considerates. Top right, spirited, highly emotional, very assertive, and there are some of them who become super spirited. Some of them are mildly spirited, some of them are way spirited. And the opposite, well, my experience is a lot of engineers, accountants, we tend to be systematics. Low key, more on the quiet side, not altogether emotionally expressive. Can be, but in our professional lives, we tend to embrace systems, analysis, ways of doing things very analytically. So top left, the direct style, can be very blunt, come on strong, very sure of themselves. A lot of times they like to control the situation. Spirited, energetic, creative, big picture, a lot of gestures and facial expressions. Bottom right, considerate, deeply emotional, friendly, loyal, sometimes not very precise, sometimes disorganized, but always people focused. And then systematics, and that's me. That's my starting point. Quiet, logical, analytical, organized, cautious, skeptical, sometimes slow to speak, very deliberate. Who are you on this chart, and who are the people that you're dealing with? Anytime you have someone who is coming at you from a different quadrant, that can be a source of discomfort. So these are predictable ways that behavior can be difficult. We become too much of who we are. This happens when we are under emotional pressure. When things are frantic, we tend to become more and more of who we are. Some of us become too strong, too loud, too aggressive, too pushy. Some of us become too emotional, too dramatic, too expressive. Others of us too quiet, too reserved, too cautious. Some of us too passive, too agreeable. These are predictable patterns of behavior. So whenever times get tough, if you know the person, think when they're under pressure, they may become more of who they are. And here's some of the specific types of behaviors that we see. I'll give you a chance to write these down as we go along. Direct people, I've seen it many times. They're no nonsense, get right to the point, and when things don't go well, they can start bulldozing. Sometimes they know so much, they want you to know that they know it all. They become extremely assertive, not overly emotional though. The spirited ones are really interesting because not only do they become very spirited, very emotional, but also it can get out of control, sometimes exploding, complaining, sniping, and there's a pattern of behavior there for bragging as well. They think they know it all. Now, go to the bottom left, systematics. Whenever systematics, and I feel this myself, whenever I become under a lot of pressure, I tend to clam up, slow things down. I want to slow things way down and think. Sometimes that's a good thing if I'm by myself, but with other people, that's a form of behavior that could, for them, become difficult to handle. Sometimes we become indecisive. And then over to the bottom right, we become overly agreeable. We want to get along with people. We have a tendency to say yes to people if we're considerates. We have that disease to please. Now, what drives each one of these? That's the interesting question. Of course, this is all rather simplistic, but we need a starting point. What are the triggers? What are the drivers for each type? My experience is that direct people, they value results. They want to get things done and now. And sometimes they have no problem saying my way or the highway. Spirited people, they love attention. They're the natural performers of the world. They like to get noticed. They like to be creative. They're out of the box thinkers sometimes. And they want people to hear their ideas. They want to be heard. Considerates, they want to get along with people. They value relationships. Can we all get along? That's their motto. Systematics want things right. They want things stable, predictable, organized. So these are starting points. Whenever we become hijacked by emotion, we become more of who we are, and this behavior becomes maybe too much for other people to handle. At this point, Katie, do we have any questions from folks? Any comments or observations so far?
I don't see any questions or comments. Let's see. One just came through. Can people be all of these?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe not at the same time. That would be multiple personalities. But you know, there's a bit of each of these quadrants in all of us. And sometimes, depending on the circumstance, the situation, our role, even our stage in life, we may go way beyond our original programming, so to speak. You ask my children, where am I on this chart? I'm spirited with my grandkids. You ask some of my colleagues who've known me decades, I was Mr. Serious, quiet, reserved. I can be direct if I need to. I like to think I can be considerate.
All
I
right,
like
one
to
more
think
question.
I like to think there's strength in being able to flex your style, your behavior pattern to the situation. Now, is this talking about being a chameleon, putting on an act? Let's look at it this way. It's a way of acting appropriately for the situation that we are in. Go ahead, Katie.
Yes, we have one more question. How do you feel the current social distancing affects addressing these with other people? Prefer to go face to face, but can't do that nowadays.
Oh, yes. For some people, and I'm thinking a couple people in my personal life, being cooped up is driving them crazy. And I'm also thinking of one of my grandsons. He is highly introverted. And we were joking, this is the Olympics for introverts. So some people need that closeness, they need that touch, they need that communication. And then some of us, we are just fine being by ourselves. This is a time of great stress for people. No question about it. I love those two questions. Thank you, Katie. Any others at this point?
No others at this time. And Rich, we are just about halfway through.
Thank you, Katie. And let's continue. What do you see? Imagine this person walked into your meeting. You're running a meeting He walked into the meeting 10 minutes after the start time, sat in the back of the room by himself, away from other people, and now this is what you see. What do you see? Well, the first thing we have to say is we see behavior. We see our time of arrival. We see his position within the room. We see his posture, facial expression, direction of his eyes. We may hear certain things from him, sighing maybe, but these are all behaviors. What is actually going on? Now, if this person has done this multiple times, we can make some educated guesses, but we have to acknowledge we don't always know for sure. We don't see their motivations in this moment. We don't see what's going on inside. We see their outer self. We do not see their inner self. It could be truly they are bored, apathetic, or they're being rude. They're trying to say something to you intentionally. But that's a judgment on our part. That's an opinion that we formed. It may be the correct opinion, but it's first probably helpful to get more information. Something else could be happening. Maybe this guy has a cracked tooth, called the dentist's office and was told, come in at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and came to your meeting anyway. It could be trouble at home. Personal story, many years ago, I was doing a workshop in Middle Georgia. A fellow by the name of Denny had been with me in 2 other workshops. And one day, on the second day of a 3-day program, he came in after lunch. He looked something like this. Knowing his previous behavior, I knew something was wrong. I asked him, Denny, are you okay? And then he told me some things that had just happened within his family. He was a different person. Now, having known him, having had some experience and seeing that this was way out of the ordinary, it was easy for me to remain calm, respectful, and tactful and ask, are you okay? I will tell you that this is a technique that I use quite often when doing face-to-face workshops, and I sense very early that some people in the workshop maybe are not with me. I'm sensing some resistance, but I try not to jump to a conclusion. And I ask them, are you okay? Once again, we're looking for patterns of behavior. And one input and one time doesn't tell the whole tale. But if there's a pattern of behavior, then we can be a little more sure of what we're looking at. Let's practice reading some behavior. What do you see here? You're seeing some facial expressions, you're seeing some body language, and you're hearing some words. You did what? You gotta be kidding me. You are dumb as a rock, D-U-M-B. My 2-year-old could have done better than that. Now, if that's the first time you've heard from this person, you're probably shocked and surprised. But if this is somebody you know who has a temper, this can be extremely intimidating. We're looking at somebody who is on the high aggression side and high emotion side. I'd call this a super spirited exploder. Not an exploder, let's call it exploding behavior. Try to avoid labeling people, but you can label their behavior. We're seeing volcanic behavior, exploding behavior. What are you seeing here? No, we're not going to do it that way. Do what I tell you to do. No more questions, just do it. That person is coming on very strong. Not very emotional, but very strong. That's bulldozing negativity. How about this one? Let me tell you how to do it. I've been doing this for years. They don't call me the whiz for nothing. That's a very assertive person and very emotional, spirited. In fact, I would say super spirited. And there's probably a bit of exaggeration in here and also a bit of braggadocio. And what I'm seeing here is know-it-all, think they know-it-all behavior. Also, you could see it as a attention-getting behavior. Sometimes you see people who do this. They make snarky remarks. You have to forgive that old boy over there. He hadn't taken his medications today. His family comes from the shallow end of the gene pool. He and his kind, they're a few fries short of a happy meal. I've had people say these kind of things in workshops. I've seen these kind of behaviors. This is sniping behavior, sarcasm, often very funny, but it's a put down. This is put down behavior. This is an aggressive sniping behavior pattern. This is kind of the opposite. Body language suggests indecisiveness, and the words, I don't know, what do you think I should do? I'm not sure. What do you think? These are the behaviors of indecision. Now, each of these types has a need. People who are indecisive in their behavior, maybe they want certainty or they want approval. People who snipe at others, well, they want attention. They're using their creative humor as a put down. It's a form of attention getting. Same thing with the know-it-all behavior, the bragging. That's a cry for attention, actually, or someone who is putting down someone else. No, do it my way. That's a need for results and control. And then behavior that's explosive, exploding, not able to deal with frustration well, wanting that attention, wanting things their way as well. Now, these are educated guesses that we make, and with experience, we can become even more, certain and confident. Here's a form of behavior: instant agreeability, the smiling face, the eagerness to please. Oh, I agree. I was wrong. I'll certainly do it that way the next time. You can absolutely count on me. Oh, by the way, how's your family? They're so uncomfortable, they want to repair the relationship and try to move on to something more pleasant. They have a need for calm and certainty and harmony in their relationships. Another pattern of behavior. So what difficult behaviors do you face? Think about them. Questions, comments? Katie, any at this point?
We do. We've got several.
Okay.
Regarding strategy and decision, where does the individual who doesn't handle input or constructive criticism and ignores feedback?
Yeah. That pattern of behavior is consistent with people who have a high need to protect their ego. Spirited people have a strong ego, and my experience is that they don't take criticism well. They do love attention and praise. They have a high self-regard. I love these people. They're often very fun to be with. But when I give criticism to them, I've got to be very careful. Now, next seminar, next Wednesday, we'll talk about specific ways of dealing with the super-spirited people who love praise but don't take criticism well. We have to be on our best behavior with them. Another question?
Do you think it is hard to change work culture if you are a systematic personality type?
Ask it one more time. Let me hear that one more time, Katie.
Do you think it is hard to change work culture if you are a systematic personality type?
Absolutely. It's always hard to change no matter what type you are. Changing the culture of a team and organization can take a long time. Now, if you happen to be a charismatic leader, one that everybody likes a lot, and one that everyone respects a lot. Those are the two dimensions of charisma. You're very likable, but also you are highly respected. You can change a culture a lot quicker. I've seen that. His name was John Smith many, many, many years ago. He was much older than the people he led. He had quite a set of credentials, but also he positioned himself as very likable. Not that he was going to be your friend, but he was always friendly with you. He was able to change the culture quicker. Now, if you're systematic and you need to change a culture, here's what I recommend. Develop strong personal relationships with people. Be very friendly. Don't necessarily be friends with people, but be very friendly. Listen to them, compliment them, and then gradually show your expertise and your knowledge, but include them, and that would make it quicker. Other question? These are
Okay, yes.
excellent questions. Whoa, these are questions that require about 15 minutes to answer.
The next one is, what are tips to actively work on correcting our own body language? Because it's usually a blind spot.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have to monitor ourselves, and part of it is practicing, recording ourselves, watching ourselves in a mirror, and also asking other people, tell me what you see. Probably the quickest way is to record yourself. Get out your smartphone, record yourself practicing something, look at it, and ask other people to give you feedback. Another question.
What do you suggest when one gets into high stress verbal situations when a lot is on the table to stay centered?
Wow, that's an excellent lead in for the next part of our training. I'm going to use that as a lead in for the next part of your planning. Anticipate and plan how you're going to react when things go haywire. Bottom of page 1, anticipate and plan. The next time I see such and such a type of difficult behavior, and name it, instead of me doing this the way I've done it in the past, I will do the following. Anticipate and create a game plan, and then practice it, practice it, practice it. Anticipate, plan, and practice. And then when it happens real time, you're more likely to use the response you've chosen. There are many possible responses. We'll cover some of these during the remaining 17 minutes. We'll cover all of these again next Wednesday. You have choices with planning, with choices, with practice. That's how firefighters develop confidence, the ability to stay calm and courageous. That's the way emergency room staff can handle all the chaos. Now, when dealing with difficult behavior, avoid taking things personally. Most of the time, it's not about you. It's about something else. Maintain a positive attitude. Some of us develop negative attitudes about people and situations. We have to be able to say, with practice, planning, and more practice, I can handle this. I can handle this situation. Say to yourself, if they go low, I go high. I'm going to bring my best self to this situation. And if the relationship is important, I'm going to step into this discomfort and show some leadership. I'm going to take the initiative to make the situation better. That's the definition of leadership. And sometimes it's going to be scary. No, it's going to be scary a lot. But when you have some tools and you practice them and you get some experience, you get better. One important tool is tough love. Let me just talk about it briefly here. Always make sure that you value the other person. I value you as a person. I care about you. Be very loving towards them, respectful. But also, if the relationship is important, there's got to be a tough side to it as well. I am concerned about the behavior that I'm seeing. It's unhealthy. It's unhelpful. Something's got to change. And then you might even give them your advice. I really need to see more of this and less of that. So you're being very soft with them as a person. You're being very firm with them about their behavior. That's a short definition of tough love. Adopt this mindset. Practice it. Things can get easier. Not easy, but easier. You have to have tools. One of the best tools I've ever learned, I actually learned from a participant in a workshop probably about 20 years ago. We were talking about dealing with tough situations, and the person said, I've learned something called red light, yellow light, green light. I've been to anger management therapy. He pulled out of his shirt pocket a 3x5 card with yellow, red light, yellow light, green light. He said, I've been carrying this around for years. Whenever I feel tense, stop. Then think, choose, and then when I feel calm, act. So let me commend this to you. Whenever you feel frazzled, threatened, scared, slow things down. Red light. This is a self-calming technique, and here's some others. Slow things down, slow down your breathing, and deepen your breathing. One technique is to breathe in for 7 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and then let it out for 7 seconds. Drink some water. Somebody told me, I've been to anger management therapy. They said, drink water when you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you're about ready to explode. Carry water with you to those meetings. And once you feel yourself getting frustrated, take a long sip of water. You can't say anything. It slows you down. One of my favorites is to go into a listening mode. Keep them talking. While they're talking, I have time to think. It works for me. That's one of my favorites. Reframe the situation. This is not about me. This is about them. Actually, I'm lucky to have them talking to me. At least I know what's going on. That's called reframing. You can also name the emotions. Right now, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling angry. Say these to yourself. This helps calm you down. Of course, talk to someone, a confidant, a mentor. Vent your feelings. There's a lot of things you can do. These are stress management techniques. Look up stress management. You'll see a lot of information to help you stay calm. At some point, lean into the discomfort. My favorite way is lean in and listen. Absorb what they have to say and ask questions. My favorite phrase, tell me more. How so? What else? What makes you say that? Why did you say that? Tell me more. Ask these probing questions. What caused that to happen? Be an expert at listening actively. These are the A's of active listening. Absorb and ask for more. While they're talking, or while you put yourself in a little bit of a timeout, you have time to think and choose. Diagnose a situation. If you're a slow thinker like me, it takes a little while. Consider what's going on. See yourself, see the other person. Choose your response. I choose to maybe withdraw. detach, avoid, because this person means nothing to me and is not important. I'm just going to get myself out of here. Or it could be, I need to put up with them. I can do it. I'll adapt. I'll put up with it. They mean so much to me. This is something we do, particularly if someone has some mental issues, some deep-seated emotional issues, and they need professional help. We learn ways of coping. Sometimes we can distract them or redirect their behavior. Had to learn to do this with my mother, who was having dementia. She was the loveliest woman, so caring and warm, but then something happened to her and it wasn't her anymore. And then I just redirect her behavior. I learned that from the people who took care of her at the nursing home. Maybe this is something we need to engage with, somebody we need to engage with and have a back and forth conversation. And then, of course, leadership, where we try to influence them. So this is a very important step. Yellow light, think, choose your response. You might also choose the tone that you use with them. Am I going to be direct, spirited, systematic, or considerate? Depending on the person, choose the style that's best adapted to them. Easier said than done, but with practice, you can get better. So red light, yellow light, and now green light, act. Apply the responses you chose. If you choose to engage or redirect or influence them, acknowledge what they said. Summarize respectfully what they said, but also what they felt and what they need, what they want. Find something to agree with. Here's a caution. Don't do this with constant complaining, negative behavior that's nonstop. That only enables it. But with others, agree with something. Yes, I can agree with you that. Find something to agree with, except with constant complaining and constant negativity. And now, assert yourself. State your position, but do it tactfully. Start with a warning. This is awkward for me, maybe for you, but there's really something important I need to say here. And then deliver something called an I message. We'll talk about I messages a lot more next program. This is an important tool, but I challenge you to think about it. Maybe even Google it. The term's been around since the 1960s. I messages, when it's going to be a difficult message to be taken in by the other party. You message when it's a compliment. Now, after you stand up for yourself, act together. But let's talk a little bit more about asserting yourself tactfully. Again, you have this serious mood setting opener. This is awkward for me, maybe for you, but there's really something I need to put out here. And then an I message. Depending on them, you might come across as stronger, medium, or softer. Now, the more assertive the person, the more they will respect you if you are somewhat assertive yourself. If you're dealing with someone who's low on assertion, don't come on too strong with them. That'll intimidate them. Go down to their level. Now, an I message emphasizes the word I, minimizes the word you. When I see, when I saw, when I observed, when I heard, when I learned, you're describing now the behavior. When I saw that I was attacked during the meeting, notice how I avoided the word you. When I noticed that my requests were not attended to, when I noticed that I was called names, when I noticed that there was rude language directed towards me. It's kind of learning a new way of talking. Avoid the word you, and then state your true emotions. I felt concerned. That's always a good one. And quite frankly, I felt annoyed, or I felt angry. I felt frustrated. And then give the reason, because. And then assert what you'd like to see. Now here's a sample. You know, this is kind of awkward for me. It may be for you, but listen, I need to put something out here. When I see anyone, just anyone, use rude language repeatedly, and when it's directed to me, well, first of all, I feel concerned because, you know, this affects other people, but also, quite frankly, upset because that language is offensive, and we've talked about this before. I prefer not to hear it. In fact, I insist on not being talked to that way ever again. Now, I'm being very assertive here with someone who is super assertive, maybe super spirited or super direct. If it's somebody who is quieter, they probably wouldn't be using rude language, but there might be something that they do. When I see anyone not follow through on my requests, you know, I feel concerned about this, very concerned, because it affects not just me, it affects the whole team. I really need to see complete follow through on this project. Now, that's the kind of language I would use with someone who's on the considerate side. So I challenge you to practice delivering iMessages. Now, if they interrupt or sidetrack, stay calm, let them finish, pause, anything else, and then slowly repeat what you wanted to say. So let me just say it again. And you rewind and restate. And then at the end, you act together. What do you think? What's something you could do differently? What can we agree on going forward? Now, there's a variation on red light, yellow light, green light. We'll talk about this next time. Katie, do we have any questions or comments? I hope we do.
We do. The first question, how to deal with personal attacks from hurt people when what they want just won't work?
Sometimes you say to them, help me understand how we could make this work because I'm not seeing it right now. But show me how it could work. Walk me through it. Now, sometimes they have big ideas, but they haven't thought it through. And then sometimes they have a good idea and you haven't thought it through. So this is going to red light. Stop, ask questions, and then think, and then choose your response. Another question, Katie.
That was it for the time being. Any other questions? Go ahead and type them in now.
Well, listen, we've covered a lot today. You've got the 2-page handout. We will cover this stuff quickly next time as a review. But what has been most important to you? We'd love to hear from you. We'd love your feedback on what you found most important and also what wasn't so important to you. Any questions, comments? I'll certainly follow up with you. Now I want to challenge you. Final thought is to put your lessons to work today. Anticipate the difficult behaviors, when, where, who, what are they going to do, and then plan ways to be your best. I certainly welcome your questions and comments. I can respond to you personally, and I'd love to do that. Next session, a week from now, we're going to get into specific tools for dealing with each of these and others. We'll talk more about exploders and how with an exploder, sometimes you have to interrupt them and call them by name. Susie, 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 time out, time out, time out. Or with a negativist, sometimes we need to cut them short. With an indecisive, we have to guide them through problem solving. With the sniper, we need to call them on it. Time out. I thought I heard a snipe there. What do you really mean by that? Or someone who's a bulldozer. No. You say to them, maybe I can do that. I can do what you want. I also have other ideas on how we can get your same results. So we got lots more to cover next time. Welcome your questions and comments. Katie, it's 1 o'clock. We're done.
Great. Thank you so much, Rich. We appreciate your time today. A couple of quick PENC announcements. Hopefully you all saw the email come through yesterday. Unfortunately, we have decided at this time to cancel the PENC summer conference. We do not have plans to reschedule that at this time. If you have any specific questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me. Our upcoming webinars, we have part 2 of this next week on April 29th. On May 13th, we have a webinar about stormwater, and then May 27th on the Wake Bus Rapid Transit. PDH forms will be emailed to you this afternoon. There will also be an NC Bell survey regarding this webinar. Please fill that out and return to me via email. Rich, thank you again. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Katie, so much for organizing this. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.